How's it going, everybody? So today we want to look at another attribute of God. We want to look at God's holiness. And so holiness is probably the most described attribute in the whole Bible. We've been looking at kind of some more like technical, metaphysical attributes of God, like aseity and immutability and omnipresence and omniscience and different things like that. But we're now entering into the kind of attributes of God which are more communicable or relatable. There's things that God is asking us to join Him in as well. And so, what holiness really means in the Bible is apartness or sacredness or uniqueness. And we see in the Bible God separating Israel from the nations around them and asking the church to come out and to be separate from the world. And so in the New Testament, we see words like sanctification, which means to sanctify means to separate. And so holiness is the apartness, the sacredness, or the uniqueness of God Himself. And typically, as Christians, we think of God's holiness, I think, as evangelicals, being almost synonymous with His moral perfection. That God is a holy God. He doesn't have any sin inside of Him. He hates sin, different things like that. And I think that's right that we think about that. I think the Bible talks a lot about that, but I think we sometimes put all of our eggs in that basket. So what I would do is I want to read Isaiah chapter 6. In Isaiah chapter 6, what we see is this three times holy, holy, holy. And R.C. Sproul in his book, The Holiness of God, says that this is the only attribute of God that's mentioned three times in a row like this because of the utter significance of the word. So this is what it says in Isaiah chapter 6. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord seated on a throne, high and exalted, and the train of His robe filled the temple. Right? So King Uzziah was this powerful king. He was a prideful king. He was an arrogant king. He was a king with a lot of structure, a lot of power. He created stability in Israel. And so when he died, Israel really mourned because of the stability and the strength that he brought. But God showed Isaiah that year that he was actually the one who was high and exalted, and he had this majesty in his robe. And above him, above God, were these seraphs, these burning ones, in the Hebrew, there's these types of angels that had 6 wings. With 2 wings they covered their faces, with 2 they covered their feet, and with 2 they were flying, and they were calling to one another, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty. The whole earth is full of His glory. And so these angels are the burning ones. These are the holy angels above God, and God is so majestic, so holy, so other, so magnificent in His brightness that 2 of the wings of each of these creatures is covering their faces, 2 are covering their feet, and this is for protection to keep them away from the holy glory of God Himself. And so when we typically think of the holiness of God, we think of it as being God being morally separate from us and from creation, but we need to understand that the Bible first starts about talking about God being separate ontologically from all of His creation. God in His essence is a different type of reality, infinitely different than all things, including even His angels. And so we need to understand that theologically, there's more common connection between a rock or a piece of dust and the highest, greatest angel than there is with that highest, greatest angel and God. Have you ever thought about that before, that God is so completely other, so completely different in His reality that even in comparison, angels are more closely related or similar in being to rocks than they are to God? And so he continues, and in this idea of this holiness of God, there's also this moral component. At the sound of their voices, the doorposts and the threshold shook, and the temple was filled with smoke. This is the Shekinah glory of God. Woe to me, I cried. This is Isaiah talking. I am ruined, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips. So we see this moral separateness that in the glory and the presence of the real God of the Bible, Isaiah recognizes his utter difference, his utter distinction from the holy God. This holy God, his glory sears and it penetrates the human's conviction. The human realizes that we don't add up and that we are in the presence of something amazing. Now, so what we need to recognize, and in the whole Old Testament, is coming up against this cultural idea that we ourselves do as well. It's a cultural idea that the ancient Near East has, the Greeks have, the Romans have, is that their little gods are part of creation, and their gods are very much connected to them. And so Mount Olympus is the place where Zeus and all the gods live. And down in the valley are where the cities are, where the humans live. And sometimes Zeus, he's already slept with all the goddesses on Mount Olympus, and he needs somebody else. And so he goes down into humanity and disguises himself as a human and sleeps with women in the city. And this produces what's called demigods, half-gods like Hercules and Achilles, who have supernatural power, and they are the heroes of old. The legends are all about these half-gods. And so we don't see a separation that, in fact, the Greek and the Roman gods, and many of the gods in Israel's day, were these types of gods who lived on the top of the mountain, the top of the food chain, and yet they shared so much in resemblance to humans. The Bible is trying to teach the opposite of this, that God is not a part of this creation. God is completely other, even than angels. He's alien, he's foreign, he's infinitely distinct. And so when we look at Israel's history, we see God saying to his people, be holy as I am holy. Leviticus is this amazing book of talking about the holiness of God, not just the moral righteousness. I don't want you to be evil, I want you to be righteous, but the separateness of God and his being. In Leviticus 11, verses 44 to 45, this is what God says: I am the Lord your God. Consecrate yourself and be holy. Consecrate means separate yourselves, make yourself special, keep yourself away. Consecrate means to dedicate yourself. Because I am the Lord, I am holy. Do not make yourselves unclean by any creature that moves about on the ground. I am the Lord who brought you out of Egypt to be your God. Therefore be holy, because I am holy. And so we see God separating Israel by pulling them out of Egypt to be his own holy people. Leviticus 19 talks about this, 19 verse 2. Speak to the entire assembly of Israel, Moses, and say to them, be holy, because I, the Lord your God, am holy. In Leviticus 20 verse 7, God says, consecrate yourselves and be holy, because I am the Lord your God. Keep my decrees and follow them. I am the Lord who makes you holy. So God is asking us to live a holy life, to partner with him as much as we can, to live in his revealed truth. But he is the one who makes us this way. In the book of Revelation, God's talking to the church, and he's saying, just the same way that he talked to Israel, telling them to come out of Egypt, he tells us to come out of Babylon. And Babylon is this symbolic picture, just like Egypt, of the world, of the disorder and the chaos, of the profane, of the common, of the human nature. And he's inviting us to come out of that and into his holy distinction. God's inviting us into that distinction. And so in Revelation 18, this is what God says. He said, I heard another voice from heaven say, come out of her, my people, so that you will not share in her sins, so that you will not receive any of her plagues. Her sins are piled up to heaven, and God has remembered her crimes. And so God is inviting Israel to sanctify, to consecrate, to become holy by separating themselves from the smaller, pathetic, corrupted understanding that our world has into a truer humanity with God. God's inviting us to be changed back. And so in the Bible teaches us that when Jesus came, he saved us. He died on the cross for us, and he sanctified us. This is a past tense term that God sanctified us. He separated us from the world. Jesus, by his blood, justified us and made us holy before God, just like the way that the Levite priests were holy and they were separated from the rest of Israel, just the way that Israel was separated from the nations. God sanctified us. But in the present time, we ourselves are being sanctified. It's a present tense idea that we ourselves are separating ourselves from the world. And that God is separating ourselves from the world and unto Christ, that we are in Christ and that we are sharing in his nature and we're becoming like the true human that he is. We are fulfilling the destiny of humanity by entering back into God's purposes for us. There's tons of passages that talk about God's past tense sanctification of Jesus on the cross, setting us apart, our sanctification. And there's ones like 1 Thessalonians 5:23 that talk about our future sanctification, our fully separating ourselves from the world, God separating us for himself. And so the question I have is, as Christians, do we believe that God is calling us to be holy? Do we desire to be holy? This is a moral uprightness, but it's also a separating of the limitedness of our culture, the misunderstanding of what it means to be a human, that we are separating ourselves and trusting and obeying a God who's holy, alien, foreign to our understanding, and that he is himself separating us too. This is what faith is about, that we would walk in this way, not the way the rest of the world walks. People like Noah would live separate from the world. People like Lot would live separate from the people in Sodom and Gomorrah. In faith, we separate ourselves. In Hebrews 11, verse 13 and 14, it says, all these people were still living by faith when they died. They did not receive the things promised. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance, and they admitted that they were aliens and strangers on earth. People say such things show that they are looking for a country of their own. If they had been thinking of the country they had left, they would have an opportunity to return. Instead, they were longing for a better country, a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. Brothers and sisters, as you listen to these things about holiness, are you separating yourself in faith that God has a different city planned for you, the holy Zion, to be separated from this world and separated unto God for his purposes? That all of eternity, God is separating us and making us his own. Do you walk in those things as if they are true in your life right now in the present? Are you sanctifying and separating yourself from sin and from the world and sacrificing yourself and giving yourself to God, that you could become his and his alone?